The Simpsons is packed with wild inventions, each more surprising than the last. Dreamed up by Springfield's oddball geniuses, they blurred the line between genius and madness. But what if they existed in real life? How much would they actually cost you? Here's the real-world price tag of every Simpsons invention, explained in detail. Take Homer's makeup shotgun, for example. The idea was simple. A standard double-barrel shotgun rigged to fire an instant makeover onto Marge's face. Naturally, it had two settings, whore and clown, neither of which passed FDA standards. In reality, the cost begins with the base firearm itself, which isn't cheap. Add in custom engineering, compressed powder delivery for liquid makeup, and let's not forget liability insurance for the lawsuits that would roll in after someone's eyebrows were permanently blown off. Altogether, the price tag hovers somewhere around $5,000 for the build, but the lifetime cost could easily balloon into millions once you factor in emergency room visits. A normal makeup kit from the drugstore suddenly looks like a bargain. Moving from personal grooming to household convenience, we stumble upon the chair with a built-in toilet. This gem of Homer's imagination combined two human passions, sitting and avoiding unnecessary movement. Essentially, a recliner with a porcelain surprise. The price would just be in construction. A proper plumbing hookup in your living room requires permits, specialized contractors, and the permanent shame of explaining it to guests. The chair itself might cost a couple of $100s, while installing drainage and sewer lines into the carpeted floor could run up to $15,000. Of course, the true price is higher. Every friend who visits will quietly judge you until the end of time. Then there's Professor Frink, Springfield's resident mad scientist who once unleashed the sarcasm detector, a handheld gadget designed to beep whenever it detected sarcasm. It was an instant disaster when pointed at comic book guy. Technologically, you need a voice recognition software, emotional inflection analysis, and enough AI to rival Siri on her sassiest day. That alone would run into tens of thousands of dollars in research and development. But the hidden cost is even steeper. In a world already drowning in sarcasm, the poor detector would burn out within minutes. Replacement parts alone could drain another $10,000 a year, which makes you wonder if a raised eyebrow doesn't already do the job for free. Transportation has always been ripe for Homer's innovations, none more infamous than the Homer car, designed by him but built by his half-brother Herb Powell's company. This monstrosity included 3 horns that play La Cucaracha, 2 bubble domes, and a separate soundproof compartment for noisy kids. The actual cost was catastrophic. In the episode, it retailed for $82,000, which is about $170,000 adjusted for today. But the true financial wreckage was the collapse of Herb's entire company, which makes the final bill somewhere in the realm of billions. Add to the emotional cost of being known as the man who destroyed his brother's life with a car that looked like a green nightmare in plastic. Speaking of questionable vehicles, we can't forget the Rocket House. When Homer wanted a mobile home, he went beyond the usual Winnebago and somehow ended up with a missile retrofitted for suburban living. The structural cost alone would make NASA blush, easily running past $50 million. Of course, once you've converted a weapon of mass destruction into a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, you also have to pay for the world's most intense security system, not to mention the annual property tax nightmare of explaining why your home comes with a launch pad. In the end, even the most luxurious RV parks in America would politely decline your reservation. Back to Professor Frink, who gave us another technological wonder, the time travel toaster. Every time Homer tried to toast a slice of bread, he wound up trapped in a different reality. Building such a device would first require inventing time travel, which physics still insists is a tad complicated. If we assume the breakthrough is possible, you're looking at billions in quantum research. Energy requirements equivalent to entire power plants, and of course, bread that's perpetually burnt. But the real hidden expense is existential. One wrong crumb in the circuitry, and you're living in a world where Ned Flanders rules as supreme overlord. Try explaining that to your accountant. Of course, not every invention was large-scale. Some were just plain lazy. Consider the automatic hammer, which Homer wielded in his attempt to avoid lifting a tool by hand. A small motor, a steel casing, and a poor understanding of physics turned it into a device that smashed everything except the nail it was meant for. At retail, maybe $60 to build, but once you count in the drywall repairs, broken bones, and emotional toll of watching your house collapse around you, the actual price skyrockets. In other words, a $5 hammer from the hardware store suddenly seems like a smarter option. Food inventions deserve their place on the list too, and none are more iconic than the out-of-control hamburger machine. Essentially, it cranked out burgers faster than anyone could possibly eat them, leading to chaos and clogged arteries. A high-output industrial grill and conveyor system would easily cost $25,000, and that's before factoring in the unlimited beef supply to keep it running. But the true long-term cost isn't financial, it's medical, with hospital bills, cholesterol medication, and an early retirement from the sheer weight of it all. This device could run into hundreds of thousands over a lifetime. The dream of burgers on demand comes with a side of bankruptcy. And then there's the electric hammer, not to be confused with the automatic hammer. This one had an actual patent filed in the show. Its design involved attaching electrodes to the user and letting them absorb shocks while hammering. The patented process alone cost thousands, and the engineering of a handheld electrocution device would likely add another $10,000. Those are priceless. Imagine the legal team you'd need when half of Springfield sues for damages after their DIY projects turned into emergency room visits. In comparison, even the most overpriced tool set at your local hardware store starts to look like a safe investment. Let's not overlook the beer dispensing hat. Homer once strutted proudly with 2 cans of beer strapped to his head and straws feeding directly into his mouth. On paper, it's one of the cheapest inventions of the bunch, probably no more than $20 to build. But the hidden costs come fast. First, there's the laundry bill from spilling beer down your shirt. Then the ticket you'll inevitably get for public intoxication. And if you ever wore it on a date, the long-term cost might include eternal loneliness. Still, for a brief moment of hands-free bliss, maybe $20 isn't so bad. But if beer hats seemed like the peak of Homer's engineering brilliance, then the next invention proved he was only just getting started in his quest to confuse science. Enter the Everything's Okay alarm, a small device with a single function, to blare loudly whenever absolutely nothing was wrong. The materials for such a gadget are basic, just a casing, a speaker, and a battery, but the programming required to ensure it only activates in moments of perfect peace might actually be trickier than building an actual smoke detector. Even if you got it working, the price tag wouldn't end at the $50 build. Speaking of sanity, no Springfield invention threatened it more than Mr. Burns' sun blocker. This giant contraption literally hovered over the town, blocking out the sun so Burns could sell more electricity. The construction price for a project of that scale would make even the Pentagon wince. We're talking multi-billion-dollar steelwork, orbital mechanics, and enough fuel to keep the thing in the sky indefinitely. Let's round it at $50 billion, which makes it more expensive than some countries' annual budgets. Of course, the true cost comes after, when you factor in the lawsuits from every Springfield citizen who suddenly developed rickets. By the time you cover all the damages, you might as well buy the sun itself, if it were for sale, which thankfully it is not. From city-scale doom to cozy kitchen chaos, we arrive at Marge's Pretzel Wagon. Though technically not an invention, Marge turned it into a Springfield classic by selling pretzels with mafia backing. The true cost here isn't the ingredients. Flour, yeast, and salt only add up to pennies per twist. But the overhead of running a pretzel empire forced by Fat Tony's crew. If you break down protection payments, ruined rivals, and the occasional bribe to Chief Wiggum, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in operational costs. And let's not forget the moral price of knowing your pretzels are seasoned with a hint of organized crime. If baked goods aren't your speed, maybe you'd prefer Homer's barbecue pit, a project that spiraled out of control until it resembled a cement spaceship sitting in the backyard. On paper, a concrete foundation and some bricks shouldn't cost more than a few $100. But when your project requires a cement mixer, multiple failed attempts, and several emergency phone calls to Lenny and Carl, the bill quickly climbs into thousands. And since it was completely unusable as an actual grill, the final value was negative. Not only did Homer lose money, but he also gained a permanent monument to his own construction failures. Realistically, the smarter investment would have been a $50 Weber on sale at the hardware store. Still, no failed project captured the Springfield imagination quite like the Monorail. Pitched by the smooth-talking Lyle Lanley, the town dumped $3 million into building a system that barely made it out of the station before disaster struck. In the real world, modern monorails cost billions to construct, so Springfield actually got a deal. Unfortunately, that bargain came with a driver's seat occupied by Homer Simpson and a track system that wasn't safe for pigeons, let alone people. The financial cost was enormous, but the reputation cost was even worse. But Springfield never stops dreaming. Remember the VR family helmets Professor Frink designed? They let the Simpsons escape into an alternate reality, except the experience quickly turned from fun to horrifying. The current market for high-end VR headsets runs anywhere from $500 to $2,000, but Frink's prototypes involved full neural interfacing and holographic rendering. A conservative estimate for that technology today, maybe $50 million in R&D, plus thousands more in therapy for anyone unlucky enough to live through Marge's fearsome virtual forms. Even Meta would politely decline to invest. On the opposite end of ambition sits the love tester machine from Moe's Tavern. Insert a quarter, grip the handle, and get your romantic compatibility score. These carnival-style gadgets can actually be bought for around $1,500 today. Moe probably picked his up secondhand, so the financial sting wasn't too bad. The real expense comes in losing dignity when your crush watches you score cold fish instead of hot tamale. That kind of emotional damage costs more than any machine ever could. And finally, there's the realm of food once more, because Homer never met a calorie he couldn't improve upon. The Ribwich, Krusty Burger's limited-time rib sandwich wasn't Homer's idea, but became one of his greatest obsessions. The production cost here is tied less to the sandwich itself. Mystery meat pressed into a rib shape is dirt cheap, and more to the environmental cost of harvesting a possibly endangered animal called the rib animal. The price? An entire species, which makes this easily one of the priciest food items Springfield has ever enjoyed. It's safe to say no amount of barbecue sauce can hide that bill. What other Simpsons inventions and their costs do you know? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and supporting our channel. Click the next video on your screen to dive into another exciting Simpsons story.